The billionaire laughed and asked the janitor's black daughter for financial advice as a joke, but her first words left him completely paralyzed. She revealed strategies no millionaire consultant had ever thought of. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The crystal chandeliers of Sterling Enterprises' executive floor cast dancing shadows across the mahogany conference table, where Marcus Sterling lounged with three of Manhattan's wealthiest heirs. At 29, Marcus had everything: a billion-dollar tech empire inherited from his father, a penthouse overlooking Central Park, and the kind of arrogance that only comes from never having struggled for anything. "Gentlemen, watch this," Marcus said, his voice dripping with amusement as he checked his Patek Philippe watch. It was nearly midnight. The entertainment is about to arrive. Through the glass doors, William Johnson appeared, pushing his cleaning cart, his weathered hands gripping the handle with quiet dignity. Behind him, small and slight, walked his 8-year-old daughter Jasmine, carrying a backpack that seemed too heavy for her thin shoulders. Marcus's friend Chad leaned back in his leather chair. "Still letting the help bring their kids to work? That's generous of you, Sterling." "Oh, it gets better," Marcus replied, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Watch this." William began emptying trash bins, his movements efficient despite his obvious exhaustion. Jasmine settled into a corner with a worn notebook, completely absorbed in whatever she was writing. Marcus stood, adjusting his $1,000 tie. "Excuse me, William," he called out, his voice sickeningly sweet. "Could you spare your daughter for a moment? My colleagues and I are having a financial dilemma." William's jaw tightened, but he needed this job. He needed both jobs. "Mr. Sterling, my daughter shouldn't—" "Oh, come now," Marcus interrupted, walking toward Jasmine with exaggerated formality. "I'm sure she has opinions. Don't you, sweetheart?" Jasmine looked up, her dark eyes taking in everything: the smirking men in expensive suits, her father's worried expression, the cruel game being played. She closed her notebook carefully and stood. "What's your question, sir?" Her voice was quiet but steady. The men exchanged amused glances. This was going to be hilarious. Marcus gestured grandly to his friends. "We're debating where to invest $50 million. Stocks, real estate, cryptocurrency. What would you do with $50 million? He barely suppressed his laughter. The room fell silent, waiting for the child to stumble, to say something foolish they could mock for weeks at their country club. Jasmine tilted her head, considering. $50 million? That's a significant sum, Mr. Sterling, but it's not the amount that matters. It's the diversification strategy and your risk tolerance. Marcus's smile faltered slightly. She continued, her small voice gaining confidence. "If I were you, I'd allocate 30% to inflation-protected securities, TIPS specifically, because your current portfolio is overexposed to market volatility. 20% should go to emerging market bonds, particularly in Southeast Asian infrastructure projects. The yields are better, and the dollar hedging protects against currency fluctuations." The laughter died completely. Chad sat up straighter. "Another 25%, Jasmine went on, should be in dividend growth stocks with a 15-year track record of beating inflation. Not the flashy tech stocks everyone's chasing. Those are overvalued. I mean boring companies like utilities and consumer staples that consistently increase dividends." Marcus felt his chest tighten. These weren't childish guesses. These were sophisticated strategies his own advisors debated. The remaining 25%. Jasmine's eyes met his directly. "That's your problem-solving fund. The money you use when your over-leveraged ventures inevitably need bailouts. Because from what I've seen in the financial journals left in your trash bins, Mr. Sterling, you make the same mistake all wealthy people make." "What mistake?" Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible. Jasmine picked up her backpack. You confuse having money with understanding money, and that confusion is going to cost you everything. She walked back to her corner, leaving Marcus Sterling, billionaire, genius, master of the universe, standing frozen in the middle of his empire, unable to breathe. His friends stared at him, waiting for the punchline, but Marcus couldn't speak. Because somehow, an 8-year-old girl who helped her father empty trash cans had just exposed the truth he'd been hiding from everyone, including himself. His empire was built on sand, and she knew it. Marcus couldn't sleep. At 3 in the morning, he stood in his penthouse, staring at the city lights below, Jasmine's words echoing in his mind. You confuse having money with understanding money. His hands trembled as he opened his laptop and pulled up his portfolio. Really looked at it for the first time in years. His advisors had always handled everything, telling him what he wanted to hear. But now, with fresh eyes, he saw it. The over-leveraged positions, the risky tech investments, the complete lack of diversification Jasmine had mentioned. By dawn, Marcus had made a decision that terrified him. At 9 o'clock, he called his secretary. Find William Johnson's contact information. I need to speak with him. The night janitor, sir. Yes, and cancel all my meetings today. 2 hours later, William stood in Marcus's office, his posture defensive, expecting to be fired. Instead, Marcus did something he'd never done before. He apologized. Mr. Johnson, last night was inexcusable. I disrespected you and your daughter. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. But I need to know. How does an 8-year-old child know things my Harvard MBA advisors don't? William's eyes filled with a complex mixture of pride and pain. Jasmine isn't like other kids, Mr. Sterling. She's never been like other kids. Tell me, Marcus said quietly. Please. William sat down slowly, as if the weight of his story required support. Her mother, Rebecca, was a mathematics professor at Columbia. Brilliant woman. Jasmine inherited that gift, but magnified somehow. He paused, his voice thickening. Rebecca died 3 years ago. Breast cancer. The medical bills took everything. Our savings, our home, her life insurance, everything. Marcus felt something unfamiliar twist in his chest. Shame. Jasmine was 5 when her mother passed, William continued. She stopped talking for 6 months. When she finally spoke again, it was to ask me about the hospital bills. She wanted to understand the numbers that had destroyed our life. He wiped his eyes. Since then, she's taught herself. Financial journals, economics textbooks from the library, anything she can find. While other kids play, she studies the markets. Why? Marcus whispered. William looked directly at him. Because she's terrified of being helpless again. She thinks if she understands money, she can protect us. Protect me. His voice broke. She's 8 years old and carries the weight of our survival on her shoulders because I couldn't protect her mother. Marcus stood and walked to the window, his billion-dollar view suddenly meaningless. He'd built nothing, he'd inherited everything, and was slowly destroying it through ignorance and arrogance. Mr. Johnson, he said finally, I want to hire Jasmine. Excuse me? As a consultant, $50,000 to review my portfolio and provide recommendations. William stood abruptly. Mr. Sterling, I don't know what kind of game. No game, Marcus interrupted, turning to face him. Your daughter saw in 5 minutes what my team missed in 5 years. I'm offering her legitimate employment, legal, documented, with you present for every meeting. He paused. I'm also tripling your salary, effective immediately, and providing full health insurance. William stared at him, searching for the trap. I'm not a good man, Mr. Johnson, Marcus admitted. But maybe I can be a less terrible one. Let me start by listening to someone who actually understands what money means. For the first time, William saw something in Marcus Sterling's eyes he'd never expected to see. Genuine humility. I'll ask Jasmine. William said carefully. "But Mr. Sterling, if you hurt my daughter again—" "You have my word," Marcus said. "And I'm discovering that's worth far less than I thought, so I'll have to earn it." As William left, Marcus returned to his window. Somewhere in this city, a child was teaching herself to fight poverty with mathematics, and somehow she was about to save a billionaire from his own ignorance. The conference room felt different when Jasmine entered 3 days later. Marcus had removed the long table and replaced it with a smaller round one. No power dynamics, no intimidation. "Thank you for coming, Jasmine," Marcus said formally. William sat beside her, protective and watchful. Jasmine placed a thick folder on the table. "I did my homework, Mr. Sterling." "Marcus, please." She ignored that. "I accessed your publicly available financial filings, analyzed your subsidiary structures, and reviewed 5 years of quarterly reports." She opened the folder, revealing pages of handwritten notes and charts. "You're in worse shape than I thought." Marcus's new CFO, Patricia Chen, who he'd invited to this meeting, leaned forward with interest. She'd been with the company 3 months and had been trying to tell Marcus the same thing. "Your core problem," Jasmine continued, her small finger tracing a hand-drawn chart, "is that you treat wealth like a video game. You make risky bets because losing doesn't scare you. You've never lost everything." Marcus flinched. "Your father built this company on innovation and patience," Jasmine said. "You're destroying it with impatience and ego. Look here." She pointed to a series of acquisitions. 17 companies purchased in 3 years. Only 4 are profitable. The others are bleeding money. But you won't close them because that would mean admitting failure. Patricia nodded slowly. She's right. The cryptocurrency investments alone, Jasmine flipped a page, have cost you $80 million. You're chasing trends instead of building value. Marcus felt his face burn. "So, what do I do?" "You stop pretending you're a genius," Jasmine said bluntly. "You start listening to people who know more than you. You divest from 13 of those failing companies immediately. You take the tax losses, stop the bleeding, and focus on the 4 that actually work." "That's humiliating?" Jasmine met his eyes. "Yes, but not as humiliating as bankruptcy, which is where you're headed in 18 months if nothing changes." The room fell silent. Patricia spoke carefully. "How do you know this? The 18-month projection?" Jasmine pulled out another sheet. "Based on current burn rate, market conditions, and the debt restructuring due next year." The math is simple if you're actually looking at it. Marcus stared at the 8-year-old, who had just handed him a financial death sentence, with perfect calm. "There's something else," Jasmine said quietly. "Your employees. You laid off 300 people last year to maintain profit margins. But those same margins are being spent on your private jet fuel and executive bonuses. That's business," Marcus said defensively. "No," William spoke for the first time, his voice hard. "That's cruelty disguised as business. Those 300 people had families, kids, bills." Jasmine touched her father's hand gently. "The point is, Mr. Sterling, that you could have saved those jobs and still been profitable. You chose not to because it was easier to cut people than to cut waste at the top." Marcus felt something inside him crack. "I didn't. I never thought." "That's the problem," Jasmine said. "You never thought about anyone but yourself." She stood, gathering her papers. "I'll prepare a detailed restructuring plan. It'll take me a week. But, Mr. Sterling, I need to know something first." "What? Do you actually want to change? Or are you just scared of losing your toys?" Marcus looked at William, at Patricia, at this extraordinary child who saw through him completely. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I want to find out." Jasmine nodded once. "Honesty, that's a start." As they left, Patricia stayed behind. "Marcus, I've been trying to tell you these things for months. Why did it take an 8-year-old to make you listen? Marcus stared at the empty doorway. Because she's not trying to protect my ego. She's trying to teach me the truth. And the truth, he was discovering, was far more valuable than comfort. The call came at midnight, 3 days into Jasmine's analysis. Marcus's phone exploded with notifications, board members, investors, media outlets. His stomach dropped as he opened the first news alert. Sterling Enterprises under federal investigation for securities fraud. His hands went numb. He called Patricia immediately. "It's the Meridian acquisition," she said, her voice tight. "The SEC is claiming we misrepresented the asset values to inflate the stock price. Marcus, if they prove this, it's not just fines, it's criminal charges." "But I didn't." Marcus stopped. He'd signed everything his previous CFO, Richard Vaughan, had put in front of him, never reading, never questioning. Oh, God. "Richard left the company 6 months ago, moved to the Cayman Islands," Patricia continued. "He's not answering calls. Marcus, this is bad, really bad." Marcus spent the next hour on emergency calls with lawyers, each one delivering worse news. The investigation was extensive. The evidence was substantial. His stock was already plummeting in after-hours trading. At 2 in the morning, sitting alone in his penthouse, Marcus did something that would have been unthinkable a week ago. He called William Johnson's cell phone. "Mr. Sterling?" William's worried voice answered. "Is everything okay?" "No," Marcus said simply. "Can I speak to Jasmine? I know it's late, but she's awake. She saw the news." A pause. "Hold on." Jasmine's small voice came on the line. "You signed documents without reading them, didn't you?" Marcus closed his eyes. "Yes." "The Meridian acquisition. Your CFO told you the company was worth $200 million, but it was really worth $60 million at best. You used that inflated valuation to secure loans and boost your stock price. I didn't know. Ignorance isn't innocence, Mr. Sterling," Jasmine said, her voice sad rather than accusatory. "Not when you're responsible for other people's money, other people's jobs, other people's retirement savings invested in your company." Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. "What do I do?" Silence on the line, then, "Tell the truth. That'll destroy me. Lying will destroy you, and everyone connected to your company. At least the truth gives you a chance at redemption." "Jasmine, I'm scared." He heard her breath catch, a reminder that she was still a child, despite her extraordinary mind. "Fear is good," she said softly. "Fear means you finally understand what's at stake." William took the phone back. "Mr. Sterling, my daughter needs sleep, but I'll tell you what I told her when her mother died. Doing the right thing is never easy, but it's always simpler than living with wrong." The call ended. Marcus sat in the darkness of his penthouse, surrounded by everything he'd thought made him powerful, and realized he had a choice to make. At dawn, he called his lawyers and told them something that made them panic. "I want to cooperate fully with the investigation. No delays, no legal maneuvering. I want to testify about everything I know." "No, Marcus, you could go to prison," his lead attorney said. "Then I go to prison," Marcus replied, "but I'm done being the kind of person who sacrifices others to save himself." Within hours, he was sitting across from SEC investigators, answering every question, providing every document, admitting every failure. The media called it corporate suicide. His board demanded his resignation. His friends abandoned him. But somewhere in the Bronx, watching the news with her father, Jasmine Johnson saw something different. She saw a man taking his first real steps toward becoming someone worth believing in. "Do you think he'll make it, baby girl?" William asked. Jasmine thought about Marcus's trembling voice on the phone, his raw fear, his choice to tell the truth even when it cost him everything. "I don't know, Daddy," she said quietly, "but I think he's finally ready to try." 2 weeks after his testimony, Marcus Sterling was no longer a billionaire. His assets were frozen, His company in receivership, his reputation destroyed. The penthouse was gone, seized as part of the investigation. He'd moved into a modest apartment in Queens, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with outdated appliances, neighbors who worked real jobs. It was the most honest place he'd ever lived. Patricia Chen had stayed somehow. She'd taken over as acting CEO, working with federal regulators to salvage what could be saved of Sterling Enterprises. 3,000 jobs hung in the balance. The restructuring plan Jasmine created, Patricia said during their meeting in a coffee shop. Marcus was banned from his own company's building, pending investigation resolution. It's brilliant. If we implement it exactly as she outlined, we can save the core business and about 70% of the jobs. Marcus stared at his black coffee. Why are you helping me? You could distance yourself, start over somewhere clean. Because you did something rare, Patricia said. You told the truth when lying would have been easier. That means something. She paused. Plus, Jasmine asked me to stay. Said you'd need someone who knows the company to guide the recovery. She said that? She calls me every few days, checks on the restructuring progress, offers suggestions. Patricia smiled slightly. Marcus, that little girl is the most remarkable person I've ever met, and she believes you can be better than you were. I don't deserve that faith. No, Patricia agreed, but maybe that's why it matters. That evening, Marcus did something he'd never done in his old life. He took the subway. Rode it to the Bronx, to the address William had given him weeks ago. The building was old but well-maintained, the kind of place where families stretched every dollar. He knocked on apartment 4B, his heart pounding. William opened the door, surprise flickering across his face. Mr. Sterling? I wanted to pay Jasmine for her work, Marcus said, holding out an envelope. It's not the full 50,000. Most of my accounts are frozen, but it's 10,000. It's all I could access. William didn't take the envelope. Come in. The apartment was small, but filled with love. Photos of Rebecca Johnson everywhere, Jasmine's drawings covering the refrigerator, textbooks stacked neatly by the sofa where she clearly did her homework. Jasmine emerged from a bedroom, wearing pajamas with mathematical equations printed on them. Mr. Sterling, she said formally, you took the subway here. How did you? Your shoes are different, less expensive, and you have a subway map in your pocket. She pointed to the corner sticking out. You're adapting to your new circumstances. Marcus sat down heavily. I wanted to thank you. Your plan is saving my company, saving thousands of jobs. Not your company anymore. Jasmine corrected gently, but yes, it's saving jobs, that's what matters. I also wanted to ask you something, Marcus continued. When this investigation is over, whatever happens to me, prison, probation, whatever, I want to set up a foundation, an education fund for kids like you. Kids with brilliant minds but no resources. William's eyes widened. It won't be much at first, Marcus admitted. I'm broke now, but whatever I rebuild, 50% goes to that fund. I want you to design it, Jasmine. Make sure it actually helps kids instead of just making wealthy people feel good about themselves. Jasmine studied him carefully. Why? Because you showed me what I'd been missing my entire life, Marcus said simply. Purpose. Real purpose, not just accumulating money for ego. She walked over to her bookshelf and pulled down a worn notebook. I've been designing an education program for 3 years, since Mom died. Though she opened it, revealing pages of detailed plans, nobody ever cared enough to listen. Marcus felt his throat tighten as he looked at diagrams for tutoring networks, scholarship criteria, mentorship programs, all created by a child who'd lost everything but refused to give up on helping others. I'm listening now, he said. Jasmine handed him the notebook. Then let's build something that matters. As Marcus left 2 hours later, his head spinning with ideas and plans, William walked him to the door. She's changing you, William observed. She's showing me who I could have been all along, Marcus corrected, if I'd ever bothered to look beyond myself. Walking to the subway, Marcus realized something profound. He'd lost his billions, his empire, his status, and for the first time in his life, he felt like he was gaining something real. 6 months passed. Marcus spent 3 of them working as a consultant for Patricia, helping restructure Sterling Enterprises from the outside. He'd taken a small salary, enough to cover rent and food, and lived simply while the investigation continued. The federal prosecutors had offered him a deal: testify against Richard Vaughan and others involved in the fraud, accept 2 years probation and financial penalties, but avoid prison time. His lawyers urged him to take it. Marcus met with Jasmine at their usual spot, a diner near her school, where they now met weekly to discuss the foundation plans. "You're going to take the deal," Jasmine said. It wasn't a question. "Yes. It means I can start rebuilding sooner, launch the foundation sooner." Jasmine pushed her hot chocolate aside. "Mr. Sterling, I need to tell you something about why I really helped you." Marcus felt a chill of premonition. "When Mom got sick," Jasmine began, her voice steady but her eyes revealing old pain, "our insurance company denied coverage for her treatment. They said her cancer was a pre-existing condition because she'd had an abnormal mammogram 3 years earlier." Marcus listened, dread building. "We fought them. Dad hired a lawyer who said we had a case, but the insurance company had more resources, more time. They delayed and delayed. We ran out of money for treatment. Mom died while we were still appealing. Jasmine, I'm so sorry. The insurance company," she continued, meeting his eyes directly, "was owned by Sterling Financial Services, your subsidiary." Marcus felt the world tilt. "What? You didn't know because you never looked at what your companies actually did," Jasmine said. "Sterling Financial Services made $300 million last year denying legitimate health insurance claims. They have an entire department dedicated to finding reasons to reject coverage." Marcus couldn't breathe. "Your mother died because your company chose profit over people," Jasmine finished. "I looked you up after that first night. I wanted to understand the man who owned the company that killed my mother." Her voice cracked slightly. "When I saw you were destroying your empire through ignorance, I thought, maybe I could hurt you back by exposing your failure." William reached for his daughter's hand. "But then," Jasmine continued, tears finally falling, "you actually listened. You actually changed. And I realized something I didn't want to admit." "What?" Marcus whispered. "That you weren't evil. You were just absent. You signed papers and collected money without ever seeing the human cost. And that made you dangerous, but not irredeemable." Marcus stood abruptly, walked to the diner's window, his reflection staring back at him. He'd thought he understood the consequences of his negligence, but this was so much worse. "I killed your mother," he said, his voice breaking. "No," William spoke firmly. "The people running that company killed her. The system that prioritizes profit killed her. You were responsible, but you weren't there. You weren't present for any of the decisions that destroyed our life." Marcus turned, tears streaming down his face. "How can you even look at me?" "Because," Jasmine said quietly, "you're not that person anymore. The Marcus Sterling who owned that company would have blamed his subordinates and moved on. You're trying to be different. It doesn't bring your mother back." "No," Jasmine agreed. "Nothing can. But maybe we can prevent it from happening to someone else's mother." She pulled out another document. Another. "This is what I really want from your foundation. Not just education funding, healthcare advocacy, insurance reform, a legal fund to fight companies like the one that killed my mom." Marcus took the document with shaking hands. "I'll do it. All of it. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make this right." "You can't make it right," Jasmine said, her wisdom heartbreaking in one so young. "But you can make it better. For someone. somewhere. As they left the diner, Marcus understood the full weight of what Jasmine had done. She'd saved him not out of kindness, but out of a hope that was almost cruel in its grace. The hope that the man responsible for her mother's death could become someone who prevented such deaths in the future. It was the greatest act of forgiveness he'd ever witnessed, and he would spend every remaining day proving he deserved it. Marcus was in his small Queens apartment reviewing foundation documents when his phone rang with an unknown international number. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Hello, Marcus." The voice was smooth, confident, utterly familiar. Richard Vaughan. Marcus's blood ran cold. "Richard, I've been watching your little redemption tour from Grand Cayman. Very touching. The billionaire brought low, learning humility from a child." Richard laughed. "It's almost Shakespearean. What do you want?" "To offer you a way out. The prosecutors are building their case against me, using your testimony. But here's the thing, Marcus. I kept records, emails where you explicitly approved the Meridian valuations, documents with your signature authorizing the fraud. That's impossible. I never—" "Does the truth matter?" Richard interrupted. "I have evidence that says you were fully involved. I can destroy what's left of your reputation, ensure you go to prison for a decade, make certain your foundation never launches." Marcus felt the walls closing in. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm offering you a deal. Recant your testimony. Say you misremembered, that you were under stress. I'll make the documents disappear. You can finish your probation, start your little charity project, play hero, and if I refuse, then I release everything. The media will eat you alive. That little girl you've been working with, imagine how she'll feel when she learns you were lying all along, that you actually knew about the fraud. That you're still the same monster who killed her mother." Marcus's hands shook. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Think carefully, Marcus. You've lost everything to build this new identity. I can take even that. You have 48 hours. The line went dead. Marcus sat in silence, his mind racing. Richard was capable of manufacturing evidence. He'd done it before, but could Marcus risk calling his bluff? Everything he'd built these past months, the trust he'd earned from Jasmine and William, Patricia's faith in him, all of it would crumble. He called Patricia immediately. "We have a problem." After explaining Richard's threat, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. "Marcus, I need to tell you something about the day Richard left the company." "What?" "He came to my office before he resigned. He knew I'd been questioning the Meridian numbers. He tried to bribe me to stay quiet, said you were too stupid to ever notice the discrepancies." Her voice hardened. "When I refused, he told me he'd kept insurance on everyone, including you. I thought he was bluffing." "Apparently not." "What are you going to do?" Marcus thought about Jasmine's notebook full of dreams, William's cautious trust, the 3,000 employees whose jobs depended on the company's clean restructuring. "I'm going to tell the truth," he said. "Again." "Marcus, if he has evidence, then we'll prove it's fabricated. But I won't become a liar to escape a liar's trap." He paused. "Can you contact the SEC investigators? I want to meet with them before Richard makes his move." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He thought about the easy path Richard offered. Recant, survive, maybe even thrive. No one would know except Richard, and Richard would be safely out of reach in the Caymans. But someone else would know. Marcus would know, and he'd spent 6 months learning that self-respect wasn't negotiable. At midnight, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Sterling, it's Jasmine. Dad gave me his phone. I heard about Richard Vaughan. My dad used to say Mom would tell us, the truth might cost you everything, but lies cost you yourself. Oh, whatever you decide, I understand. But I hope you remember who you've been becoming. Jay." Marcus stared at the message, tears blurring the words. An 8-year-old child who had every reason to want him destroyed was offering him grace. He texted back, "I remember. Thank you for reminding me. M." The next morning, Marcus walked into the SEC office and told the investigators about Richard's threat. They listened grimly, then shared something that made Marcus's heart race. "Mr. Sterling, we've been monitoring Mr. Vaughan's communications. We know about his insurance files. We were waiting to see what you'd do. You were testing me?" The lead investigator, a stern woman named Janet Morrison, nodded. "Your cooperation has been valuable, but we needed to know if it was genuine or tactical. Richard Vaughan just gave us that answer." She smiled slightly. "He also doesn't know that we've already subpoenaed his files. The documents he claims show your involvement. They're forgeries, poor ones. Our forensic team spotted them immediately." Marcus felt his legs weaken. "So, I was never in danger." "You were in danger of making a terrible choice," Morrison said. "Many people in your position would have taken Vaughan's deal. You didn't. That tells us everything we need to know about your character now versus who you were." As Marcus left the building, he called Jasmine's father. "William, can I take you and Jasmine to dinner tonight? My treat. Well, my small budget's treat. There's a pizza place in Queens that's actually affordable." William laughed, the first genuine laugh Marcus had ever heard from him. "We'd like that." That evening, sharing pizza in a cramped restaurant, Marcus told them about Richard's trap and his decision to refuse it. Jasmine raised her soda, to telling the truth even when it's hard. They clinked their glasses, soda, water, and cheap beer. It was the best meal Marcus had ever had. But in Grand Cayman, Richard Vaughan was making plans of his own, plans that didn't involve extradition laws or legal proceedings, plans that would strike at the only thing Marcus Sterling still had left to lose. 3 months later, Marcus stood in a modest community center in Brooklyn for the official launch of the Rebecca Johnson Memorial Foundation. The name had been Jasmine's idea, and William had cried when he heard it. The foundation had exactly $200,000, money from the sale of Marcus's watch collection and a few personal items not seized in the investigation. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "We're offering full scholarships to 20 students this year," Marcus announced to the small crowd of parents and children from underserved neighborhoods. "But more importantly, we're providing mentorship, tutoring, and healthcare advocacy services." Jasmine stood beside him, looking tiny behind the microphone. "My mom used to say education was the one thing nobody could take from you. This foundation makes sure every kid gets that chance, regardless of their family's income." The applause was warm, real. These weren't society people clapping politely. These were families who understood exactly what was at stake. After the ceremony, a woman approached Marcus nervously. She was thin, exhausted, holding the hand of a boy about 10 years old. "Mr. Sterling, I'm Carmen Rodriguez. I saw the news about the foundation, about the healthcare advocacy." She paused, gathering courage. "My son Miguel has leukemia. Our insurance company is denying treatment, saying it's experimental, even though it's his best chance." Marcus felt Jasmine stiffen beside him. "What insurance company?" he asked quietly. "Sterling Financial Services." Of course it was. The subsidiary hadn't been fully dissolved yet. It was stuck in legal limbo during the bankruptcy proceedings. Miguel looked up at Marcus with wide, scared eyes. "Are you the bad man who owned the company that's hurting me?" The question pierced Marcus like a blade. "Yes," he said simply. "I am. I didn't know they were hurting people, but I should have. I owned the company, so it's my responsibility." Carmen started to pull her son back, but Jasmine stepped forward. "Mrs. Rodriguez, Mr. Sterling can't change what his company was, but he can help fight them now." Marcus nodded. "I know people inside Sterling Financial Services. I know how they operate. Give me your son's case file. I'll find a way to help. I can't pay. That's what the foundation is for, Marcus said. This is exactly why we exist. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus discovered that Sterling Financial Services had gotten worse since he'd been removed. The new management, desperate to extract value before bankruptcy, had become even more ruthless about denying claims. Marcus called Patricia. I need access to internal documents, patterns of claims denial, evidence of systematic fraud. Marcus, you're not supposed to have contact with company operations during investigation. A boy is dying because my company is choosing profit over his life, the same way they chose profit over Rebecca Johnson's life. I can't. I won't let it happen again. Patricia was quiet. I'll email you files, anonymously. If anyone asks, you didn't get them from me. Patricia, do it! Save that boy! Marcus spent 72 hours analyzing the documents, identifying patterns, building an airtight case. He contacted medical ethicists, insurance law specialists, patient advocacy groups. He learned more about healthcare in 3 days than he'd learned in 30 years of owning a healthcare company. Finally, he submitted a formal complaint to the state insurance commissioner with 40 pages of documentation showing Sterling Financial Services had systematically denied legitimate claims to boost profits. The response was swift. The insurance commissioner launched an immediate investigation. Sterling Financial Services was ordered to stop all claims denials pending review. Miguel Rodriguez was approved for treatment within 24 hours. Carmen called Marcus, sobbing with relief. You saved my son's life. No, Marcus said, looking at Jasmine, who had helped him organize the documentation every evening. We all did, together. But that night, Marcus received an email from an encrypted address. You just cost Sterling Financial Services $30 million in forced claim approvals. The company's creditors are furious. They're demanding you be held financially liable for damages. See you in court. RV Richard Vaughan was coming after him again. And this time, he wasn't alone. The lawsuit was filed in federal court 3 days later. The creditors of Sterling Financial Services claimed Marcus had illegally interfered with company operations, causing financial harm. They were seeking $200 million in damages. You don't have $200 million, Marcus's lawyer Tom Chen, Patricia's husband, pointed out. You barely have 20,000. They know that, Marcus said. They're trying to destroy the foundation, tie up our resources in legal battles, prevent us from helping anyone else. Tom reviewed the documents. The case is weak, but defending it will cost a fortune. Legal fees alone could bankrupt you completely. Then I'll represent myself. Marcus, that's insane. Is it? I've spent 6 months learning what I should have known all along, how my companies actually operated. I probably know Sterling Financial Services better than their own lawyers now. Tom shook his head. You'll lose. Maybe, but I'll lose fighting for something that matters. The preliminary hearing was set for 2 weeks later. Marcus spent every available hour preparing, studying legal precedents, and learning courtroom procedure. Jasmine helped, her mathematical mind perfect for organizing complex arguments and identifying logical fallacies in the opposition's claims. You're good at this, Marcus observed one evening in the foundation's tiny office. Mom wanted to be a lawyer before she became a professor, Jasmine said quietly. She used to tell me about cases, how to build arguments. I remember everything she taught me. She'd be proud of you. Would she? Jasmine's voice was small. I helped the man whose company killed her. Sometimes I wonder if that makes me a traitor. Marcus set down his papers. Jasmine, you did something much harder than revenge. You gave someone a chance to become better. That takes more courage than hate. Do you think you're better, really? I'm trying to be. Every day. That's all I can promise. The hearing arrived. The courtroom was packed. Media, creditors, curious onlookers wanting to see the fallen billionaire fight for survival. The creditor's lawyer, a sharp woman named Victoria Brennan, was ruthless. "Mr. Sterling, you knowingly interfered with Sterling Financial Services operations despite being barred from company contact." "I exposed systematic fraud," Marcus countered. The insurance commissioner agreed. "You cost the company millions, harming the creditor's recovery. I saved a child's life and dozens of other patients who were being illegally denied care. Your motivation doesn't change the legal reality. You violated the terms of the investigation agreement." Marcus felt the case slipping away. Then Jasmine, sitting in the gallery with her father, raised her hand. The judge, an older woman named Harriet Goldstein, noticed. "Young lady, this isn't a classroom. Your Honor, I'm Jasmine Johnson. I'm the Director of Healthcare Advocacy for the Rebecca Johnson Memorial Foundation. I have evidence relevant to this case," Victoria objected. "She's not a lawyer. She can't present evidence." "I'm not presenting evidence," Jasmine said calmly. "I'm offering to testify as an expert witness on Sterling Financial Services claims practices." Judge Goldstein raised an eyebrow. "You're what, 8 years old?" "9 now, Your Honor. And I've analyzed over 500 insurance denial cases from Sterling Financial Services. I can demonstrate systematic patterns of fraud that predate Mr. Sterling's intervention." The judge looked at Marcus. "Is she serious?" "Completely, Your Honor." "This is highly irregular," Victoria protested. "So is a company killing people for profit," Judge Goldstein replied dryly. "I'll allow it. Miss Johnson, approach the stand." What happened next would be discussed in legal circles for years. Jasmine, speaking clearly and methodically, outlined patterns of illegal claims, denial, that shocked even the judge. She presented statistical analysis, cited specific cases, and demonstrated that Sterling Financial Services had been operating fraudulently for at least 5 years. The company wasn't harmed by Mr. Sterling's actions, Jasmine concluded. It was already engaged in criminal activity. He simply exposed it. Victoria tried to discredit her, but Jasmine's evidence was airtight. Every claim documented, every pattern verified. It was devastating. Judge Goldstein recessed to consider the evidence. When she returned, her expression was grim. "The creditor's case is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm recommending criminal investigation into Sterling Financial Services operations and its current management." She looked at Marcus. "Mr. Sterling, your past negligence created this situation, but your current actions prevented further harm. That matters." As they left the courthouse, William hugged his daughter. "Your mother would have been so proud," Jasmine looked at Marcus. "We won." "You won," Marcus corrected. "I just stood there while you saved us all." But outside, reporters were waiting with questions Marcus couldn't answer yet. Questions about Richard Vaughan, who'd been spotted boarding a plane to New York. Questions about threats made against the foundation. Questions about what Richard Vaughan planned to do now that legal means had failed. The fire started at 2 in the morning. By the time firefighters arrived, the foundation's office was engulfed in flames. Everything, documents, computer servers, the carefully organized files for 20 scholarship students, destroyed. Marcus stood in the street watching his dream burn. Firefighters' radios crackling in the darkness. The arson investigator would later find evidence of accelerant, proof of deliberate destruction. But Marcus already knew who was responsible. His phone buzzed with a text from the same encrypted number Richard had used before. "You should have taken my deal. This is just the beginning." Patricia arrived within the hour, followed by William and Jasmine. They stood together in the pre-dawn cold, watching smoke rise from the ruins. "We can rebuild," Patricia said, but her voice lacked conviction. "With what money?" Marcus asked quietly. "The foundation's accounts were modest. We don't have insurance on that office. I couldn't afford the premiums. He felt the weight of failure crushing him. All those kids we promised scholarships. All the families depending on healthcare advocacy. It's gone. Jasmine walked closer to the building, studying it with unusual intensity. Marcus recognized that look, her analytical mind working through a problem. "Jasmine, get back," William called. "It's not safe." She turned to face them, her face illuminated by the dying flames. "The fire started in the back office, but our important records weren't kept there," Marcus frowned. "Yes, they were. The filing cabinets were decoys," Jasmine interrupted. "Mr. Sterling, I didn't trust that we were safe, not with Richard Vaughan still out there. So I kept copies of everything, all the scholarship files, all the healthcare cases, all the financial records. Digital backups in 3 separate cloud services and physical copies in a safety deposit box." Patricia stared at her. "You're 9 years old. How did you—" "My mom taught me something before she died," Jasmine said. "She said powerful people try to destroy evidence when they're cornered, so keep multiple copies. Make yourself impossible to erase." Marcus felt something shift inside him, a crack in the despair. "Everything is backed up? Everything. Richard Vaughan destroyed an office. He didn't destroy our work." William shook his head in amazement. "When did you do this?" "The first week we opened, I knew someone would eventually try to stop us." Jasmine looked at Marcus. "People like Richard Vaughan don't change. They just get more desperate." As dawn broke over the destroyed office, Marcus felt a fierce determination replace his despair. Richard wanted to break them. But he'd underestimated the little girl who'd learned to fight poverty with mathematics. They relocated the foundation to William's apartment temporarily. Jasmine's bedroom became the office, her school desk their command center. It was cramped and chaotic, but they were operational within 48 hours. The story of the arson spread quickly. Local news covered it. Then national news. The narrative was irresistible. A fallen billionaire trying to make amends, a brilliant child helping him, and a vengeful former executive trying to destroy them both. Donations started arriving, small amounts mostly, $20 here, $50 there. People who understood what it meant to fight against those with power. Within a week, they'd raised $40,000, but the real gift came from an unexpected source. Marcus received a call from Janet Morrison, the SEC investigator. "Mr. Sterling, I shouldn't be telling you this, but Richard Vaughan's travel to New York violated his bail conditions. We've issued a warrant for his arrest. He's not in the Caymans anymore. He was spotted near your foundation's office the night of the fire. We have surveillance footage. He's on U.S. soil and he's going to prison." Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Thank your persistence. Most people would have given up by now." That evening, as they worked in Jasmine's converted bedroom office, police arrested Richard Vaughan at a Manhattan hotel. The charges were extensive: fraud, arson, witness intimidation. Patricia called with the news. "It's over. Richard's going to prison for a long time." But as Marcus looked at Jasmine, focused intently on organizing scholarship applications, he realized something profound. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. They'd survived the darkest assault Richard Vaughan could mount. Now they could finally focus on the work that mattered, helping children who, like Jasmine, deserved a chance that poverty tried to deny them. "Mr. Sterling," Jasmine said without looking up from her work, "next scholarship cycle, I think we can support 50 students instead of 20. With the donations coming in, we have the resources." Marcus smiled, genuinely smiled for the first time in weeks. "Then that's what we'll do." Outside Jasmine's bedroom window, New York City sparkled with possibility. The empire Marcus had inherited and lost was gone forever. But sitting in a 9-year-old's bedroom, helping her change the world one scholarship at a time, he'd found something his billions never bought. He'd found purpose, real, meaningful purpose, and he'd never felt richer. 18 months after the foundation's launch, Marcus stood in Columbia University's mathematics building, the same place where Rebecca Johnson had once taught. The room was filled with students, educators, and families, the first annual Rebecca Johnson Memorial Scholarship Ceremony. 50 students received full scholarships that day. Not just tuition, but living expenses, books, mentoring, and healthcare advocacy support. Everything Jasmine had designed in her original notebook. But the true miracle stood at the podium. Miguel Rodriguez, now 12 years old and cancer-free, thanks to the Foundation's healthcare intervention. "I shouldn't be here," Miguel said, his voice steady despite his emotion. "Sterling Financial Services said my treatment was experimental, not worth the cost. They were ready to let me die to save money." He looked directly at Marcus. "Mr. Sterling owned that company. He could have walked away when we sued. Instead, he fought for me. He changed everything." In the audience, Carmen Rodriguez was crying quietly. Beside her sat 20 other families who'd received healthcare advocacy support, children who'd been denied treatment until the Foundation intervened. When it was Marcus's turn to speak, he felt the weight of everything that had brought him to this moment. "I'm not going to pretend I'm a hero," he began. 2 years ago, I was a billionaire who'd never worked for anything, never questioned anything, never understood anything. I owned companies that hurt people, destroyed families, chose profit over humanity. I did that, not intentionally, but through willful ignorance, which might be worse." He paused, finding Jasmine in the crowd. She sat with her father, both dressed formally for the occasion. "Then I met a child who'd lost everything because of my negligence, and instead of destroying me, which she had every right to do, she taught me. She showed me what I'd been missing my entire life: purpose beyond wealth, success measured in lives helped rather than dollars accumulated." Marcus pulled out a letter. "This morning I received notification that my probation is complete. The investigation is officially closed. I'm legally free to rebuild my business career, return to the corporate world." A murmur went through the crowd. "I'm not going to do that," Marcus continued. "Instead, I'm announcing that I've enrolled in Columbia's Social Work Master's program. I'm going to learn properly how to help people, how to advocate for those without resources, how to do the work Jasmine has been teaching me." The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, Patricia found Marcus in the hallway. "You're really going back to school. At 31, I'll be the oldest student in most classes, and probably the least prepared." He smiled. "But yes, it's time I actually learned something useful." "The Sterling Enterprises restructuring is almost complete," Patricia said. "The company is stable now, profitable, ethical. The board wants you to know they'd consider bringing you back as a consultant." Marcus thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. "Tell them thank you, but I have better things to do." Later, as the crowd dispersed, Marcus found William and Jasmine outside looking at the mathematics building. "This is where Mom taught," Jasmine said softly. "Room 304, complex analysis." "Would you like to see it?" Marcus asked. They took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Room 304 was a standard classroom, but to Jasmine it was sacred ground. She walked to the lectern, ran her hand across it. "She loved teaching," William said. "Even when she got sick, she kept going as long as she could, said mathematics was too beautiful not to share." "Jasmine," Marcus said carefully, "I've been thinking. The Foundation is growing beyond what we imagined. We need proper leadership, someone who understands the mission at its core." "You want me to run it?" Jasmine asked. "When you're ready. For now, I want you to be our education program designer. Paid position. 30,000 a year to start, increasing as you take on more responsibility. You'd work part-time, after school and weekends." William started to object, but Jasmine's eyes had lit up. "I'd be making real decisions?" she asked. "You'd be shaping how we help students for decades to come." Building the program your mother would have wanted to exist. Jasmine looked at her father, who nodded slowly. If it doesn't interfere with school. It won't, Marcus promised. Education first, always. As they left Columbia's campus, the three of them, the former billionaire, the widowed janitor, and the brilliant child who'd saved them both, walked through the gates where Rebecca Johnson had once walked. The foundation had helped 50 students this year. Next year they projected 200. In 5 years, maybe 1,000. But the real legacy wasn't in numbers. It was in the boy who survived cancer, the families who fought insurance denials and won, the children who'd inherit opportunities their parents never had. It was in the transformation of a careless billionaire into a purposeful advocate. It was in a little girl who turned her grief into grace, her loss into legacy. As they stopped for pizza, their tradition now, Jasmine pulled out her ever-present notebook. "I've been designing something new," she said. "A program for kids whose parents are incarcerated. They face unique challenges, and nobody's really addressing them." Marcus smiled. Of course, she was already thinking about the next group that needed help. "Show me," he said. And there, in a small pizzeria in Manhattan, over cheap slices and soda, they began planning how to change more lives. Outside, the city hummed with millions of stories, tragedies and triumphs, losses and redemptions. Somewhere a child was struggling. Somewhere a family was breaking under financial pressure. Somewhere someone needed help. And now, finally, Marcus Sterling was becoming the kind of person who could provide it. Not because he had billions, but because he'd learned what truly mattered. 5 years after that first night, Jasmine turned 14. The Rebecca Johnson Memorial Foundation now supported over 3,000 students across 12 states. Marcus had completed his master's degree and worked full-time as executive director. On her birthday, William handed Jasmine a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. "Your mother left this for you. She wrote it 2 weeks before she died. Made me promise to give it when you turned 14. Jasmine's hands trembled as she read. Marcus watched her face transform, confusion, shock, then tears streaming down her cheeks. "Dad," she whispered, "did you know?" William read the letter, his face going pale. He passed it to Marcus. "My dearest Jasmine, if you're reading this, I've been gone 9 years. I need to tell you something. When Sterling Financial Services denied my claim, I investigated them. I documented everything. Hundreds of fraudulent denials, statistical patterns, systematic abuse. I was going to testify and bring down the entire company. But the cancer spread too fast. I knew I wouldn't survive long enough. So I organized all my research, documents that someone brilliant like you could understand and use someday. Everything is in safety deposit box 892 at Metropolitan Bank, branch 447. The key is in your baby book behind your first photo. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it so other mothers wouldn't die needlessly, so other children wouldn't watch their parents suffer while companies counted profits. You're old enough now to decide what to do with this. Use it or let it go. Either choice is okay. One more thing. If you ever work with Marcus Sterling, trust your judgment. My research showed he was negligent, not evil. Sometimes the greatest grace is helping those who hurt us become better. Your generation will change the world through transformative compassion. I love you forever, Mom. Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. She knew everything, years before we did. They retrieved the box the next day. 3 thick folders contained Rebecca's meticulous documentation, evidence that would have destroyed Sterling Financial Services years earlier, evidence Jasmine had unknowingly reconstructed herself, following her mother's intellectual path without realizing it. "She prepared me for this," Jasmine said softly. "Every bedtime math story, every lesson about data, she was teaching me to finish her work." Marcus stared at documents dated before Rebecca's death. These would have saved her case. "No," Jasmine corrected gently. "She was too sick. But they saved Miguel Rodriguez. They saved thousands. Mom's work didn't die. It just waited. Patricia examined the evidence. We could reopen investigations against the original executives. No, Jasmine said firmly. Mom wanted change, not revenge. We've created that change. That's the victory that matters. That evening, they stood at Rebecca's grave together for the first time. I never got to apologize to her, Marcus said quietly. She knew, Jasmine replied, touching the headstone. The letter proves it. She knew someone would eventually care. She made sure I'd recognize that person when they appeared. William placed flowers down. Rebecca always said the world was full of people waiting to be better. They just needed someone to believe they could be. Jasmine turned to Marcus. 5 years ago, I helped you to understand the man who owned the company that killed my mother. Then I helped because you could change. Now I help because you're family. Marcus couldn't speak through his tears. The Foundation Board meets next week, Jasmine continued. I'm proposing legislative advocacy, real systemic insurance reform. Let's finish what Mom started. Marcus smiled through his tears. She'd be so proud of you. She'd be proud of both of us, Jasmine corrected, for proving people can change, for proving love is stronger than hate. 10 years later, Jasmine testified before Congress about insurance reform. 20 years later, the foundation operated in all 50 states. At 32, she won the Nobel Prize in Economics. And through it all, Marcus Sterling, her adoptive father, stood beside her, the billionaire who'd learned that true wealth isn't measured in dollars. That night, leaving the cemetery, they walked together under infinite stars. A cruel man had become compassionate, a grieving child had become a changemaker, a mother's love had survived death itself, and somewhere above, Rebecca Johnson smiled, knowing her daughter had finished what she'd begun, not with anger but with grace.